Your daughter is gone, and your brother was there when it happened. The words exploded through the phone with a finality that crushed Alexandra Monroe's chest, as if an iron weight had dropped straight onto her ribs. At 26, she had survived deployments in the Middle East, stitched soldiers under fire, and stood unblinking while others panicked. But this call shattered her in ways enemy gunfire never could. She dropped the device, her hands trembling violently, her knees buckling against the sterile wall of the Naval Infirmary where she had just ended a routine shift, her ears filled with a high-pitched ringing, drowning the rest of the voice that still echoed from the small speaker on the floor. Lily, her 4-year-old daughter, her sunshine, her bedtime singer, the one person who had given meaning to every lonely tour, every scar left behind by a loveless childhood. Gone. For long moments, Alex sat on the floor, clutching her knees, gasping for air, whispering Lily's name again and again like a broken prayer. Training told her to control her pulse, regulate breathing, stay rational, but training failed in the face of motherhood torn apart. Then another fragment of information reached her from the trembling nurse who dared to break protocol. This was not a random tragedy. Witnesses claimed Marcus Monroe, her elder brother, had been nearby. There were bruises on Lily's arms, marks consistent with being shoved. Her mind recoiled, then ignited. Grief cracked into fury. Marcus. Always Marcus. At 32, he had lived his life shielded by privilege, praised for his uniform, adored by their father, and excused for every cruelty. When Alex was 8, he had shoved her face into the snow until she nearly blacked out. When she was 15, he split her lip in the garage for refusing to do his homework. And every time she begged for protection, their father, General Edward Monroe, would stare coldly and pronounce, "Your brother is the future. Toughen up or stay silent." Their mother's death, when Alex was 12, had left the household barren of tenderness. Edward raised Marcus as heir, and Alex as a burden. She buried bruises under sleeves, swallowed humiliation, and poured herself into study until the Navy became her escape. Service gave her worth where her family gave only scorn. But then Lily was born a child from a brief and failed romance, yet Alex never regretted it. That little girl was her redemption, her evidence that love could grow even from poisoned soil. And now the soil was scorched. When Alex finally stumbled into the county morgue hours later, the hall smelled faintly of antiseptic and cold steel. She was led to a drawer where a white sheet covered the small form. With shaking hands, she pulled the fabric back just enough to reveal golden hair and a pale cheek. Lily's face was still too still. Alex pressed her lips to her daughter's hair, fighting a sob that threatened to tear her throat. "I will not let them bury the truth with you," she whispered. "I will not let him walk free." The door opened with sharp footsteps. General Edward Monroe entered uniform, pristine silver stars, gleaming eyes hard as carved stone. Behind him followed Marcus, tall, broad-shouldered, handsome enough for strangers to call heroic, but to Alex, those eyes had always been filled with mockery. "What did you do?" Alex spat, her voice raw. Marcus spread his hands with false innocence. She darted into the street. "Kids do not listen. I tried to grab her." Her fists clenched. "She was 4. You were supposed to watch her." General Edwards' tone was colder than the tile floor. "Enough. Tragedies happen. Your brother is a decorated officer. Do not smear him with accusations you cannot prove. Remember who you are speaking to." The words struck like a whip, but Alex did not flinch this time. She turned to meet her father's stare, her own eyes rimmed red, yet burning steady. "She was my child. You can protect him like always, but you will not silence me again." Marcus scoffed, though a flicker of unease touched his face. "You are making this about you. Stop overreacting." Alex laughed once, sharp as broken glass. "Overreacting. She is in that drawer because of you." Edward stepped closer, towering. "If you think you can challenge me, think again. This family's name stands on my reputation. If you drag us into scandal, you will destroy yourself, not us." Alex bent over Lily again, letting tears fall one last time. then rose with a steadiness that startled even herself. The grief hardened into iron resolve. She looked at both men and said in a voice calm, measured, deadly certain, "You just set me free from every chain you forged. I will see you both fall." The silence in the morgue thickened. For the first time, Marcus shifted his weight as if unsure. Edward's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as if recognizing too late that the daughter he had belittled for years had become something he could not control. Her phone buzzed. She answered with a voice barely above a whisper. On the other end was Captain Sarah Doyle, her immediate superior. Sarah's words carried both compassion and warning. "Alex, I heard. I am so sorry. Listen carefully. General Monroe has already moved to declare this an accident. They are locking the reports, but I am granting you emergency leave. 72 hours. Use them however you need. After that, I cannot shield you." Alex closed her eyes. 3 days. 72 hours to honor her child, to tear through lies, to confront the brother who had haunted her life. She opened her eyes again, no longer clouded by tears, but sharpened into focus. "Thank you, Captain," she said. When the call ended, she turned back to the men who had shaped her pain. Her father still stood stiff metals catching the light, Marcus smirking faintly, but Alex no longer felt small. She felt like a storm gathering force. She whispered one last promise over Lily's still form, then walked out into the dawn. The air was cold, the horizon pale with first light. Somewhere inside her, a clock had started ticking. 72 hours. Every second would matter. The foundation of her war had been laid not in sand, but in blood and resolve. The ride back to Coronado blurred past her eyes' headlights, streaking like comets across a night she could no longer measure. Alexandra Monroe drove as if possessed, hands locked on the steering wheel, her pulse pounding a countdown inside her chest. 72 hours. The number carved itself deeper into her mind with each passing mile. When she finally reached the hospital where Lily's body had been transferred for final examination, the halls reeked of bleach and silence. She pushed through the double doors, demanding to see the attending physician. Dr. Harris met her with eyes weighted by sleeplessness and a conscience troubled by more than medical duty. He drew her aside, lowering his voice as if afraid the walls had ears. "Lieutenant Monroe, I examined your daughter. Her injuries are inconsistent with a simple accident. She did not just run into traffic. There are abrasions on her forearms as if she was shoved, bruising around her shoulders impact patterns that suggest someone's deliberate hand. I have noted it in my private files, but officially the chart reads accidental trauma." Orders came down quickly, too quickly. His gaze darkened. "Your father's name carries weight in this town. Do you understand what I am saying?" Alex felt the fire in her chest roar higher. She whispered a thank you, her voice scraping like broken glass, and walked down the hall toward the observation room. There behind glass lay the small form she had kissed goodbye only hours earlier. She pressed her palm against the cold barrier, tears stinging but not falling. Behind her, a familiar laugh echoed. She turned. Marcus leaned against the wall. His posture relaxed as if nothing had happened, as if the world still bent to him. "You should not be here," she said, her voice low but cutting. He shrugged, adjusting his uniform jacket with deliberate arrogance. "I came to check on you, little sister. You always get so emotional. Lily was an accident. Kids do unpredictable things. You should not blame me for what life throws." Her body shook, but she forced her fists to unclench. "You pushed her. I know it. Dr. Harris knows it, and one day the whole world will know it." Marcus smirked, stepping closer until she could smell the cologne he always wore, heavy and suffocating. "You have no proof, and even if you did, who would believe you? Father runs this town, this base, this family. You are a medic with a temper. I am the decorated officer. Who do you think the Navy will stand behind?" Before Alex could answer, heavy footsteps approached. General Edward Monroe entered the corridor, his voice sharp enough to slice through the air. "That is enough. Marcus, go home. Alexandra, pull yourself together. This behavior dishonors Lily's memory. Do you want the press to see you falling apart like a hysterical child?" Alex's jaw tightened until her teeth ached. She turned her back on both men and faced the glass again. For a moment, she let her grief show, bowing her head, but when she raised it, her reflection in the window no longer looked like a broken woman. It looked like a soldier planning a campaign. Later that night, she sat in the corner of the hospital chapel, a place meant for prayers, but now hosting her fury. The pew creaked under her weight as she clasped her hands and stared at the cross above the altar. Memories of Lily's laughter played like cruel echoes. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through old videos until one began to play. Lily's small voice sang a nursery rhyme, stumbling on the words, giggling at the end. The sound cut Alex to pieces. She buried her face in her hands, shaking until footsteps approached once more. Captain Sarah Doyle entered quietly out of uniform, her expression softer than usual but edged with urgency. She sat beside Alex without asking, folding her hands on her lap. "I had to come in person," she said. "General Monroe is already filing paperwork to close the investigation. He wants the record sealed before morning. But I authorized your leave. 72 hours. You have that window, nothing more." Alex lifted her eyes, red-rimmed but burning. "He killed her, and Father will protect him again." Sarah exhaled slowly. "I know, but if you want the truth out, you need allies, you need evidence, and you need to keep your head. Do not go rogue without a plan. Otherwise, they will bury not just Lily, but you too." She gripped Alex's shoulder firmly. 72 hours, Lieutenant. Use them wisely." When Sarah left, Alex sat alone with her daughter's voice still humming from the phone. She whispered to the empty chapel, "I will not waste a second." By dawn, she was on the road again, this time to her childhood home, where the Monroes still ruled like a dynasty. The mansion loomed against the coastal sky, its walls lined with flags and portraits of Edward in various uniforms. Alex stepped inside, the smell of polished wood and old bourbon choking her. Marcus sat at the dining table sipping coffee as if the world were not rotting around him. Edward stood at the head of the room, already in uniform, though no parade awaited him. "Sit," Edward commanded. Alex did not move. "I am not here to sit. I am here to look you both in the eye." Marcus laughed, leaning back. "Still playing soldier, little sister? Still thinking you can fight battles that are already lost?" Edward's glare silenced him. "Alexandra, listen carefully. Your accusations end here. If you value your career, if you value what little respect this family still holds for you, you will close your mouth. Lily's death is a tragedy, but it is not Marcus's fault. Say otherwise again, and you will find yourself stripped of your commission faster than you can blink." Alex inhaled deeply, feeling every word carve into her. She imagined Lily's small hands clapping the warmth of her cheek pressed against her own. That image gave her strength. "You always said I was weak. You always told me to stay silent." "Not anymore. You can bury the reports, you can threaten my career, but you cannot erase the truth. And when it comes out, it will burn everything you built." Marcus slammed his mug onto the table, coffee spilling across the wood. "Watch yourself. You think you scare me. You are nothing without this family's name." Alex leaned forward, her voice steady, controlled, cold as steel. "Then it is time the world learns exactly what this family's name hides." For the first time, Edward's face twitched. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, recognizing something new in his daughter's tone. She was no longer begging for approval. She was promising war. That night, Alex returned to her apartment near the base. The silence inside felt unbearable without Lily's laughter. She wandered through the rooms, touching toys, still scattered a drawing pinned to the fridge with clumsy letters spelling "Mommy, I love you." She pressed her forehead against the paper, trembling. Then she squared her shoulders and pulled out a notepad. Names, dates, strategies began to flow across the page. Witnesses to track down, files to uncover, people to call. She would not sleep until she had the framework of her campaign. As she wrote, her phone buzzed. A message from Sarah Clock is ticking. Trust no one. Another from an unknown number followed, "Stop digging or you will regret it." Alex stared at the threat, then at Lily's drawing. A slow smile touched her lips, not of joy, but of grim determination. The enemy was already watching. That meant she was on the right path. She whispered into the empty room, "You should have left me grieving. Instead, you woke something you cannot contain. Outside, the city stirred awake under the rising sun, unaware that a war had just begun within one woman's 72-hour countdown. The morning after her confrontation at the Monroe house felt heavier than any battlefield Alex had ever walked. The ocean breeze through her apartment window did nothing to cool the fever that burned inside her chest. Her notepad lay sprawled across the kitchen table, pages filled with scrawled names, arrows half-formed strategies. She knew one thing with certainty. To face Marcus and her father alone would be suicide. To tear down the fortress they had built, she needed allies who understood both the cruelty of her family and the weight of the truth. Her fingers hovered over her phone until they landed on a number she had not dialed in months. Noah Carter. When the call connected, his voice was the same mixture of sarcasm and sincerity she remembered from high school. Alex Monroe. "Thought you forgot me. I need you," she said, blunt, her throat tight. He paused, then his tone shifted serious now. "I heard about Lily. I am so sorry." Her breath caught, but she forced herself steady. "It was not an accident. Marcus was there. I need someone who can dig where the official files will be buried. You are still running those investigative pieces, right?" Noah exhaled slowly. "I cover corruption, military contracts, backroom deals. But you are talking about your own blood. Are you sure you want this out in the open?" Alex's answer came without hesitation. "He killed my daughter. My father is covering it. I will not let them walk away again." By noon, Noah was at her apartment, his reporter's bag slung over one shoulder, his eyes sharper than she remembered. He had been the lanky kid who carried her books when Marcus shoved her into lockers, the teenager who once patched her split lip in a school bathroom with tissues and silence. Now he was a journalist hardened by years of chasing stories no one wanted told. He hugged her briefly, then pulled back, scanning the room, noticing the toys, the drawings, the silence. "You are holding together by threads," he said softly. "Threads are enough," she replied. "Help me weave them into a rope around his neck." They sat at the table, evidence spread between them. Medical notes Noah was able to access through his contacts, whispers from hospital staff, photographs Alex had taken of Lily's bruises. Noah's jaw clenched as he examined them. "This is not just negligence. This looks intentional, but to prove it, we need more. Witnesses. Records. Something they cannot erase." Alex nodded. "And I know who can get us that." "Elena Torres." Noah raised an eyebrow. "The sergeant who broke into an encrypted server during deployment just because she was bored." The same one, Alex answered, a faint shadow of a smile passing her lips. By late afternoon, Elena arrived. Dark hair, pulled tight, eyes sharp, the woman carried herself with the posture of a soldier who never stopped scanning for threats. She embraced Alex like a sister, then stepped back, reading the room immediately. "I heard whispers about Lily. I wanted to believe it was just a rumor. It was Marcus," Alex said flatly. Elena's eyes darkened. "Then we bring him down. What do you need?" Alex spread the files. "They will bury this before sunrise. I need someone who can pull military police reports, internal complaints, sealed testimonies. Marcus has a record, I know it, and father scrubbed it clean every time." Elena cracked her knuckles, the faintest grin curving her mouth. "Give me until midnight. If he sneezed in uniform, I will find the file." As Elena set up her laptop, the room became a war room. Noah Cross referenced contracts pulling threads between Marcus's finances and suspicious defense deals. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, slicing through firewalls as if they were paper. Alex paced, mind swinging between memories of Lily's giggles and the grim strategy unfolding on the table. The emotional waves threatened to drown her grief, crashing in one moment, icy rage rising in the next. At some point, Noah pushed his chair back, eyes wide. "Alex, look at this. Marcus is tied to a private weapons distributor based in Nevada, the same company your father has been endorsing in his recent speeches. Payments funneled into offshore accounts. This is bigger than a family cover-up. This is organized." Alex felt her stomach drop. The personal horror of Lily's death now connected to a wider corruption. Her father was not only shielding a violent son, he was profiting from it, protecting networks that fed off military families and contracts. Elena whistled low, her screen glowing. "And here we go. Internal complaint filed 5 years ago. Marcus was accused of assaulting a fellow officer during training. The report vanished after General Monroe intervened. Another record from his ex-wife, hospital admission for broken ribs. The file is marked confidential, but the notes scream abuse. He has been violent for years. It is all here buried under layers of clearance. Alex sank into her chair, hands over her face. The weight of confirmation pressed down like lead. She had not been crazy all those years. Every bruise, every insult, every fear had been real. And now Lily had paid the ultimate price. She lowered her hands, eyes glinting. This ends now. The three worked until the windows darkened with night. At one point, Noah pulled out his phone and showed Alex a clip. Lily in his archives from a family barbecue years earlier, twirling in a sundress, singing off Key Marcus in the background, rolling his eyes. The sound of her daughter's voice cracked Alex's armor for a moment. She pressed the screen to her chest, sobbing quietly, then wiped her face and stood taller. We will not let her fade into silence. Near midnight, Elena leaned back satisfied. I have what we need. Copies secured on external drives. Even if they try to erase it, it is locked now. Marcus is a walking time bomb and Father is his shield. We hit both, we take them down together. Noah looked at Alex, his voice firm. Are you ready for the fallout? This will not just be about your daughter. This will unravel your entire family, your father's career, his reputation, your own standing in the Navy. Alex's response came clear and cold. My daughter's life is worth more than their empire of lies. If I fall fighting, but I will not let Marcus walk away again. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. 71 hours left. The war room fell into silence as the weight of what they were about to unleash settled around them. Alex stood at the window, staring into the night. Her reflection stared back not as the broken daughter of Edward Monroe, but as the mother of Lily Monroe, a woman forged by loss, sharpened by rage, steadied by allies at her side. She whispered into the darkness. You thought I would stay silent. You were wrong. This time, the world will hear me. Behind her, Noah and Elena exchanged a glance. They saw it too. The transformation had begun. The morning sun rose over Coronado like a cruel reminder that time refused to stop for grief. Alexandra Monroe sat at her kitchen table with Noah and Elena, the remnants of coffee cups scattered between files and laptops. The notepad she had begun the night before was now covered with bolder strokes arrows connecting names, circles around key pieces of evidence. 71 hours left. She had no luxury of hesitation. Her daughter's face lingered in every corner of the apartment, her laughter echoing in the silence. Each memory was a blade pressing Alex forward. She drew a line across the page and wrote 3 words at the top. Evidence, exposure, execution. These would be her pillars. She looked at Noah first. You keep digging into Marcus's financials. Contracts, offshore accounts, anything that ties him to Father. If we can show money moving through both of them, it will be harder to dismiss. Noah nodded already, tapping on his laptop. Turning to Elena, Alex's eyes sharpened. You find the buried files. Every report of violence, every sealed complaint. I want a pattern that proves Lily was not the first and would not have been the last. The Navy respects patterns. If we present a history of cover-ups, they cannot hide behind accident anymore. Elena smirked, her fingers poised above the keys. Already ahead of you, but I will dig deeper. Someone out there tried to silence victims. If I can trace who signed off, it leads back to Edward. Alex leaned back, exhaling slowly. She knew this would be dangerous. She knew the moment she pushed too hard, her father would unleash the full weight of his influence. But she also knew Marcus had underestimated her resolve. She wrote a 3rd column in her notes. Public. She underlined it twice. We cannot win this in secret. He has the courts, the police, even the Navy at his back. Our only chance is exposure. We hit them where they cannot control the narrative. In front of witnesses. In front of the press. Noah looked up. You are talking about going public yourself. That puts you in their crosshairs. Alex's gaze hardened. I am already in their crosshairs. They killed my daughter. They took everything. The only weapon I have left is the truth, and I intend to use it. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the clack of keys and the scratch of Alex's pen. By afternoon, Elena straightened, stretching her arms with a grim smile. Got something. 5 years ago, Marcus assaulted a fellow officer during a training exercise. Witness reports said he pinned the man against a wall until he passed out. The complaint was buried. Edward personally ordered the file sealed. 3 years ago, Marcus's ex-wife filed for a restraining order. Hospital records showed broken ribs. She withdrew the request after a visit from Edward's legal team. And last year, a bar fight off base left another man hospitalized. Charges vanished. The same signature appears on every clearance form. General Edward Monroe. Alex closed her eyes, pain slicing through her chest. Not only had her father protected Marcus, he had become the architect of his violence. By saving him from consequences, he had shaped him into the monster who took Lily. She opened her eyes again, no longer wet with grief, but cold with determination. This is the pattern we needed. When the time comes, we lay this out in front of everyone. Noah looked up from his laptop, his voice heavy. And it gets worse. Marcus is laundering money through shell companies tied to a defense contractor. The contractor supplies weapons overseas, some of which ended up in hostile hands. Payments run through accounts your father manages. This is not just a family scandal. This is treasonous negligence. If this leaks, Edward's career is over. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of Elena's computer. Alex rose, pacing. Then we have more than enough. But we need a moment, a place to strike, something they cannot prepare for. Somewhere they expect me to be broken, not armed with truth. Her eyes fell on a framed photo of Lily on the mantel, a picture from her 3rd birthday party. Balloons in the background, frosting smeared on her cheek, her little hands clapping. Alex whispered to the photo, then turned back to Noah and Elena. Her funeral. That is where we hit them. They will expect me to mourn quietly. Instead, I will turn it into a tribunal. Noah's eyes widened. That is explosive. Press will be there. Military brass will be there. If you play this wrong, they will paint you as unstable. Alex's jaw set. Then I play it right. We gather everything. The confession, the files, the finances. We make sure it is impossible to dismiss. If they want to call me unstable, let them try in front of a grieving mother with evidence in her hands. I will not let Lily's farewell be silence. Elena leaned forward, her expression fierce. If you do this, you cannot stop halfway. Once it is out, they will come for you with everything. Alex met her eyes. Then let them come. I am done running from this family. By nightfall, they had mapped out the operation like a mission plan. Noah would coordinate with sympathetic journalists, ensuring coverage was live. Elena would prepare the files, set up a secure system to display them on screens at the service. Alex would deliver the words herself, the speech not of a soldier, but of a mother demanding justice. Still, the waves of emotion crashed unpredictably. At one moment, Alex sat rigid, scribbling her speech at another. She collapsed against the couch, clutching Lily's stuffed bear, sobbing until her chest ached. Noah sat beside her during those moments, silent, letting her grieve. Then Elena would remind them both, pain is fuel. Do not let it waste. Near midnight, Alex opened an old shoebox of photographs. She showed one to Noah and Elena. Lily drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalk, Marcus in the background, scowling. He hated her, Alex whispered. He saw her as a stain, a reminder. I built a life without his approval. He thought if he erased her, he erased me. He does not understand that losing her did not break me. It made me unstoppable. She tucked the photo back, wiped her face, and stood. Tomorrow we start gathering witnesses. Anyone who ever saw his violence. Anyone father silenced. We bring them all. The clock ticked closer to dawn. 70 hours remained. The trap was set in motion. Marcus believed he was untouchable. Edward believed his reputation was unshakable. Both were wrong. Alex had turned her grief into strategy, her tears into weapons. She whispered into the quiet apartment a vow to her daughter and to herself. The day of your funeral will be the day our family's lies are buried instead. The next evening bled into darkness as Alexandra Monroe drove toward the gated estate where Marcus lived. The road curved along the cliffs above the Pacific waves, crashing below as if echoing her pulse. Every turn of the wheel felt like a drumbeat counting down the 70 hours she had left. She wore civilian clothes, plain jeans and a jacket. Nothing to mark her rank, nothing to hint that this was a mission. In her pocket was a small recorder already humming silently. She would not leave this house without proof. The guard at the gate barely looked up when she flashed her family name. Edward's shadow stretched far. The steel bars swung open and Alex pulled forward, headlights cutting across manicured lawns and polished cars lined like trophies. The house loomed all glass and stone, Marcus's monument to vanity. She parked, stepped out, and walked to the door. Her fists were tight, not from fear, but from the effort of keeping her rage contained. Marcus answered after a pause, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, drink in hand. He smirked when he saw her. "Well, if it isn't little sister. Come to apologize for embarrassing father yesterday." Alex's voice was low, steady. "I came to hear you say it. Out loud." He chuckled, stepping aside with theatrical politeness. "By all means, come in. Let's toast to family unity." The living room was a showcase of wealth. Leather couches, expensive paintings, bottles of scotch displayed like medals. Alex ignored it all and stood in the center staring at him. "Say it, Marcus. You were with Lily. You pushed her. You watched her die." His smirk widened as he swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "Careful, Alex. That kind of talk sounds paranoid. Dangerous, even. People might think grief broke you." Her fists clenched, but she did not move. The recorder in her pocket caught every syllable. "You hated her, because she was mine, because she reminded you that I survived without you." Marcus slammed the glass onto the counter, liquid spilling. His mask cracked. "She was a mistake. A bastard child that stained our name. You think you are better than me because you wore a uniform and played nurse on the battlefield. But you are still weak." She was weak. "I just showed you the truth." The words seared into Alex's chest, but she kept her voice calm. "So you admit it." For a heartbeat, he looked startled, then laughed harshly. "What difference does it make? Father will bury it like he always does. You have no one. No one believes you." Her hand brushed her pocket, reassured by the silent machine capturing his arrogance. She stepped closer, lowering her voice until it was ice. "I believe me, and soon the whole world will." Marcus's eyes narrowed. He leaned in, his breath heavy with alcohol. "You are playing a dangerous game. Accuse me again in public, and father will destroy you. He will strip your rank, your career, everything. You will crawl back here begging for scraps while I take what I want." Alex almost snapped, then her hand twitching toward the weapon she kept hidden in her jacket. For one wild second, she imagined ending it right there, ending him watching the arrogance drain from his face. But Captain Sarah's warning echoed in her head. "Justice has to be public. If you want it to matter, it cannot be in shadows." She forced herself to breathe, forced her finger away from the trigger. Instead, she let silence hang heavy between them until Marcus scoffed, misreading her restraint as defeat. He poured another drink and lifted it in mock salute. "To family, to father, to the Monroe legacy. You will never take us down." Alex turned, walking toward the door. "Enjoy your drink, Marcus. It will be your last as a free man." He laughed behind her, but she heard the edge in it. For the first time, doubt had seeped into his confidence. When she stepped outside, the cold night air hit her lungs like steel. She pulled the recorder from her pocket, replaying his words softly. The sound of his arrogance filled the silence. It was not enough for conviction, but it was a crack, and she would widen it until the whole facade shattered. She drove to the harbor where Noah and Elena waited in Noah's car. The moment she slid into the back seat, Elena leaned forward. "Did you get it?" Alex pressed play, letting Marcus's voice fill the small space. The silence afterward was electric. Noah exhaled sharply. "That is not just arrogance. That is confession. Coupled with the evidence we already have, it paints a damning picture." Alex's hands trembled slightly, the release of holding herself together in front of Marcus. "I almost lost it. I almost ended him right there." Elena's gaze was steady. "But you didn't. That's what makes you stronger than both him and Edward. You are building a case they cannot erase. You are turning their own words against them. Noah tapped his pen against the dashboard. We need corroboration. If someone else heard him, if someone else saw what happened, it strengthens the case. Did anyone witness him with Lily that day? Alex's throat tightened. Dr. Harris suspects it. He saw the bruises. But he is terrified of Edward. Then we protect him, Noah said firmly. We get his testimony on record quietly, securely. If he fears retaliation, we find a way to shield him. The three of them mapped the next steps in hushed tones. Secure more witness statements. Connect Marcus's confession to the pattern of violence Elena had uncovered. Link it to Edward's financial corruption. Then drop it all where the Monroes least expected it in the public eye. But as the plan took shape, Alex's emotions surged again. She pulled Lily's stuffed bear from her bag, clutching it against her chest, rocking slightly as tears finally spilled. She called for me, Alex whispered. The doctor said she was calling for me in those last moments. Noah placed a hand on her shoulder. And now you are answering. Every step you take is for her. Elena's voice was softer than usual. You are not alone anymore. We will not let them silence you. For a long moment, Alex sat in the car. Grief and rage crashing through her like twin storms. But when she looked up again, her eyes were clear, her jaw set. Tomorrow we begin gathering witnesses. The next day we prepare the evidence for the funeral. And when that day comes, I will look Marcus and Edward in the eye and show them what justice looks like. The car fell silent. Outside, the harbor lights flickered against the dark water. Alex watched them, imagining Lily's reflection in every ripple. She whispered one last vow into the night. I will not fail you, my little girl. Not again. Never again. The following morning broke gray and heavy, the kind of sky that promised storms, even if no rain fell. Alexandra Monroe woke on the couch, Lily's stuffed bear pressed to her chest, her notepad still open on the coffee table. She had barely closed her eyes when her phone buzzed. The voice on the other end made her blood run cold. It was her commanding officer's aide delivering the news with mechanical precision. Lieutenant Monroe, you are temporarily suspended from duty pending review of conduct unbecoming. Effective immediately. The words hit harder than a bullet. Her father's hand was everywhere. He had moved faster than she anticipated striking before she could gather her momentum. She sat frozen, the phone slipping from her fingers. Minutes later, Noah arrived with the newspaper in his hand, his face grim. The headline splashed across the front page screamed what Edward wanted the world to believe. Tragedy strikes Navy family. Little girl runs into traffic. The article painted Marcus as a grieving Uncle Edward, as a stalwart general enduring family heartbreak, and Alex as an unstable young officer cracking under loss. Noah dropped the paper onto the table, his jaw clenched. They are rewriting the story. If we do not move fast, this will become truth. Alex stared at Lily's picture on the wall, fury boiling up. He thinks he can silence me by stripping my uniform by turning the press. He does not understand that I do not need the Navy to fight him. I only need the truth. Elena barged in minutes later, laptop under her arm. I traced movement through military servers. Someone high up ordered files related to Marcus's past sealed permanently. We are locked out. This was not just Edward's influence. He called in favors. She paused, scanning Alex's face. You look pale. What happened? Alex told her about the suspension. Elena swore under her breath, pacing the room. They are boxing you in. First, they strip your authority, then they taint your reputation, then they wait for you to break. That is the playbook. The walls felt as though they were closing in grief and fury, tangling into suffocating weight. For a moment, Alex wanted to collapse to let exhaustion swallow her. She poured a glass of whiskey and downed it, the burn sliding down her throat like fire. She poured another, but Noah caught her wrist. Do not give them what they want. They want you drunk, broken, ranting so they can say you lost your mind. If you go down that path, Lily's voice dies with you. Alex slammed the glass onto the counter, shattering it. Shards scattered across the floor, glittering like tiny blades. For a long moment she stared at them, breathing hard, then bent down and picked up Lily's bear again. The softness steadied her trembling hands. She whispered into the fur, I hear you, baby. I hear you. Noah crouched beside her, voice low. Listen, I have a contact inside the police department, Detective Ryan. He owes me. I will see if he will confirm what Harris told us. If we can get an official voice doubting the accident story that cracks their shield. Elena pulled up her files, eyes scanning lines of code. And I will keep digging. There is a trail here. Edward is too arrogant to cover every footprint. He left something exposed. The hours crawled. Alex drifted between despair and determination, every memory of Lily fueling her resolve, every reminder of her father's reach, threatening to crush her. At dusk, Noah returned his face tight. Bad news. Detective Ryan says the department has already filed its final report. They ruled it an accident, no foul play. And the kicker Marcus was seen attempting CPR at the scene. Witness statement from one of his own employees. That locks the narrative. Alex's hands curled into fists. He staged it. He shoved her, watched her fall, then played savior in front of a witness. Noah nodded grimly. Exactly. And with Edward pulling strings, no one will question it. For the first time since the call about Lily, Alex felt her knees weaken. She sank into a chair, head in her hands. Maybe I cannot win this. Maybe they are too powerful. Maybe Lily will be just another name on a buried report. The room fell silent. Elena looked at Noah, then back at Alex. She walked over, pulled out her phone, and pressed play. It was the recording Alex had captured the night before. Marcus's voice filled the room, arrogant and unguarded. She was a mistake. A bastard child that stained our name. I just showed you the truth. The sound jolted Alex upright. Tears filled her eyes, but her spine straightened. The despair cracked, replaced by fire. No. I will not let him define her as a mistake. She was everything. She was love. And I will make sure the world sees what he is. Her voice grew steady. We do it at the funeral, in front of everyone. They cannot spin that away. He will damn himself in his own words. Noah nodded relief, flickering across his face. Then that is the plan. We make the funeral their stage of reckoning. But as resolve returned, new danger crept in. A knock at the door shattered the fragile calm. Alex opened it to find two uniformed officers standing stiffly. One held an envelope. Lieutenant Monroe, this is a formal warning. Cease your harassment of Major Marcus Monroe immediately. Continued behavior will result in charges. Alex's chest tightened as she took the paper. The words inside confirmed what she already knew. Edward was moving to crush her completely. She closed the door, her hand shaking but her eyes burning. He wants me silenced. That only means we are getting close. That night, after Noah and Elena left, Alex sat alone. She poured another drink, stared at it, then pushed it away. She lit a candle beside Lily's photo, the flicker reflecting in her wet eyes. She whispered to the picture, "They are winning today, baby. But tomorrow I will turn the tide. I swear it." She stayed there until dawn, candle-burning low grief carving lines into her face. But when the first light broke through the blinds, she stood shoulders squared. 70 hours had shrunk to 60. She had lost battles before, but she had never surrendered. And she would not start now. The storm Alex had been waiting for finally broke, not in the sky, but in the files Elena unearthed that morning. The sergeant sat cross-legged on the floor of Alex's apartment laptop, balanced on her knees, face lit by the glow of scrolling code. Alex and Noah hovered over her shoulders as lines of numbers, names, and hidden contracts appeared like ghosts finally forced into the light. Elena's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the weight of what she was revealing. This isn't just Marcus beating up fellow officers and Edward burying the evidence. This is an operation. Weapons shipments, falsified invoices, money routed through shell corporations. Your father and brother are not just covering up a death. They are profiting from it. Millions of dollars. Alex's stomach nodded. She had known her family was corrupt, but seeing the proof laid bare was like being slapped. Tell me plainly, what does it mean? Elena clicked another folder open. It means your father has been backing a defense contractor that secretly sells to groups overseas. It means Marcus has been laundering money through car dealerships and fake training programs. And it means Lily's death was more than personal hatred. It was convenient. She was leverage against you. They knew you were asking too many questions on your last tour. They silenced the one thing they thought could break you. Noah leaned back, running a hand over his face. God, they didn't just kill your daughter out of spite. They killed her to keep you in line, to shut you down before you stumbled onto this. Alex felt her breath falter. The walls seemed to tilt. For a second, she was back in the morgue. Lily's hair soft under her lips, the world collapsing. But then the grief twisted into something harder. She gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. They miscalculated. They thought it would stop me. But now, I am coming for everything. The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Noah and Elena exchanged a glance. They had both seen soldiers before battle, but Alex looked different, half broken, half forged into something unyielding. The plan sharpened. Noah would track financial trails, contacting journalists willing to risk everything. Elena would copy and encrypt every document, spreading them across safe servers, so even if Edward struck back, the truth would survive. And Alex would prepare the strike itself, Lily's funeral. That night, Alex sat alone at her desk, drafting the words she would speak. At first, her hand shook, sentences starting and stopping, grief choking the ink. But as the hours passed, the lines became clearer, stronger. She wrote not as an officer, not as a disgraced daughter, but as a mother and as a witness. She wrote of Lily's laughter, of Marcus's cruelty, of Edward's corruption. She wrote until her pen tore through the paper, until her tears blurred the words, until at last she set the pen down with hands steady. But even as she planned, her enemies moved. A news broadcast played across the television, Edward at a podium in uniform, reporters clustered around him. His voice boomed with false authority. My family has suffered a terrible tragedy. My granddaughter was lost in an accident. In these difficult times, I ask the media to respect our privacy. Speculation and wild accusations from certain unstable parties will not be tolerated. The camera panned slightly, and Alex saw Marcus standing behind him, solemn mask in place, every inch the grieving uncle. Her fury spiked so sharply she almost threw the remote at the screen. Unstable parties, she hissed. He was painting her as insane before she even had the chance to speak. Elena muted the broadcast. Then we need to move faster. He knows you're building momentum. That's why he's pushing this narrative. Noah's phone buzzed. He read the message and his face darkened. A contact of mine just told me Edward pulled strings with military court. They're preparing charges of insubordination against you. If they file it before the funeral, you might be barred from even attending. Alex's jaw tightened. Then we make sure they cannot file it before. We push the evidence out tonight. Even if I'm arrested tomorrow, the story will already be alive. They worked into the small hours, their apartment transformed into a command center of resistance. Noah coordinated leaks to sympathetic reporters, packaging financial trails and documents Elena secured. Elena burned copies onto drives, handing one to Alex. If everything else fails, if we're compromised, get this into the hands of the right person. It has everything. Emails, transfers, recordings. It'll bury them. Alex slipped the drive into her pocket, feeling the weight like a weapon. As dawn broke, she stepped outside for air. The ocean stretched beyond the cliffs, endless and indifferent. She closed her eyes and heard Lily's voice singing in her memory, the silly tune from that last video. It steadied her. She whispered into the wind, I will use every breath I have left to make sure they pay. That afternoon, she visited the church where Lily's service would be held. Rows of pews, the smell of wax and old wood, the sunlight cutting through stained glass. She walked the aisle slowly, imagining it filled with mourners, with soldiers in dress uniforms, with cameras capturing every word. She stood at the pulpit, her hand resting on the wood. For a moment, doubt pierced her. Could she stand here, broken, accused, suspended, and still make them listen? But then she looked at the small framed photo of Lily that had already been placed near the altar. Her daughter's smile erased the doubt. Alex straightened her voice, whispering into the empty hall. When I stand here, the world will hear the truth. That evening, Elena called her into the kitchen. She turned the laptop so Alex and Noah could see. It was a video Marcus had not intended to leak. Security footage from a warehouse. Marcus shouting at men unloading crates, his voice caught clearly. Father wants these shipped without questions. We don't care where they end up. Just move them. Noah whistled low. That's it. That ties him to the arms deals. That ties Edward too. This isn't just family scandal, this is federal crime. Alex felt a grim smile touch her lips for the first time in days. Then we give them no way out. At the funeral, we expose it all. Not just Lily's death, but everything they've hidden. We rip their empire down to its bones. The clock ticked on. The hours fell away. Grief pulsed through her veins, but so did fire. The deeper game had revealed itself. It was no longer just a daughter mourning her child. It was a soldier preparing for a war that would topple giants. And Alexandra Monroe was ready to fight it to the end. The morning of Lily's funeral dawned with a cruel brightness, the kind of California sun that felt wrong on a day meant for mourning. Alexandra Monroe stood in her small apartment, black dress laid across the bed, the stuffed bear pressed to her chest one last time before she tucked it into her purse. She stared into the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Her eyes were ringed with sleepless nights, but within them burned a cold fire. Today was not only for grief. Today was war. Noah pulled up in a rented sedan, his tie crooked, his notebook ready. Elena followed in a separate car, her laptop bag slung across her shoulder like armor. Both looked at Alex as she stepped outside, the wind lifting strands of her dark hair. Noah spoke first. You ready? Alex's voice was calm, steady. I was born ready the day they broke me. Today I break them. The church was already filling when they arrived. Uniformed officers in oppressed blues lined the pews. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, and at the front, beneath a cascade of white lilies, stood Lily's small framed photograph, her smile frozen in innocence. Reporters lingered outside cameras poised, though restricted from entering. But Alex had arranged for Elena to handle that. Hidden transmitters would stream every word live. As she walked down the aisle, whispers followed her. Some pitied her, some doubted her sanity after Edward's press campaign, but none could ignore her presence. She moved like a soldier to her post, shoulders squared, chin lifted. At the front sat General Edward Monroe, medals glinting under the stained glass, and beside him, Marcus, in his dark suit, face composed into the mask of a grieving uncle. The sight of them made Alex's stomach twist, but she held her composure. She could not falter now. The priest began with the rituals of sorrow prayers echoing through the vaulted ceiling. Alex knelt, head bowed, though her mind was not on the words. Her pulse pounded in her ears, her hand tight around the small drive hidden in her purse. When the priest finally invited her to speak, she rose slowly, carrying the stuffed bear in her hand. Gasps fluttered through the crowd as she ascended the steps to the pulpit. She placed the bear on the lectern beside Lily's photograph and looked out at the sea of faces. Her father's eyes bored into her with silent command. Say nothing, play the part. Marcus smirked faintly, certain she would crumble. But Alex's voice rang clear. Thank you for coming to honor my daughter Lily. She was 4 years old. She loved to sing. She loved to draw. She believed the world was safe, that people were kind. But she was wrong. And she is not here today because someone she trusted took that innocence from her. A ripple of shock spread across the pews. Edward stiffened. Marcus shifted in his seat. Alex continued, her voice unwavering. You have been told this was an accident, that she ran into the street, that there was nothing anyone could do. That is a lie. She did not stumble into fate. She was pushed into it. By my brother, Marcus Monroe. Gasps erupted. Marcus shot to his feet. She's delusional. She's grieving. Ignore her. But Alex raised her hand, silencing the room. I have his words. Recorded. I have the bruises the doctor saw, and I have years of evidence my father covered for him. Every assault, every complaint, every crime, buried under Edward Monroe's signature. Elena tapped a key from the back pew. The projector flickered to life on the church wall. Marcus's voice filled the sanctuary, captured in the recording Alex had risked everything to get. She was a mistake, a bastard child that stained our name. I just showed you the truth. The congregation erupted, murmurs rising into shouts. Reporters outside leaned forward as Elena's stream went live, broadcasting to thousands. Marcus lunged forward, but officers blocked him, uncertain, now faces pale as they processed what they heard. Edward stood, voice booming. "This is a disgrace. My daughter has lost her mind. Cut the feed. This service is over." But Noah stepped into the aisle, holding up printed documents. "Not over. Not until they see the rest." He handed them to nearby officers who scanned signatures, financial trails, contracts linking Edward and Marcus to weapons smuggling. Alex's voice cut through the chaos. "This is not just about Lily. This is about every soldier betrayed, every family robbed, every victim silenced so these men could hold power. My daughter's death was the final spark. Today, the fire burns their lies to ash." The room shook with tension. Some officers rose torn between obedience and conscience. One finally stepped forward, hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Major Monroe, you are under arrest pending investigation." Marcus's face twisted, fear breaking through arrogance. "Father, do something!" Edward barked. "Stand down! That's an order!" But another officer turned to him, voice firm. "With respect, sir, orders don't cover treason. You're coming with us, too." The sanctuary erupted. Cameras clicked furiously as reporters rushed in through the open doors, streaming the spectacle. Marcus shouted denials, Edward threatened ruin, but both were flanked and escorted out in handcuffs. Alex stood at the pulpit body, trembling, tears streaming freely now. The crowd parted in shock and awe, some reaching out to touch her shoulder as she descended. She returned to Lily's photo, touched the frame, and whispered through her sobs, "We did it, baby. They cannot hurt anyone else. Not ever again." The bear sat beside the photograph, silent witness to justice unleashed. Outside the church, the world was already watching. Screens lit up with headlines, "General and Son Exposed at Funeral. Mother Brings Down Monroe Legacy." The tide had turned, and Alexandra Monroe had not only avenged her daughter, she had stripped her toxic family bare for all to see. The days after the funeral were a blur of headlines, subpoenas, and disbelief spreading across the nation like wildfire. What had begun as a quiet service for a 4-year-old child transformed into the most shocking public exposure of military corruption in recent history. Alexandra Monroe found herself at the center of the storm. Cameras followed her every step, microphones pushed into her face, but she ignored them all. Her focus was on one thing: seeing Marcus and Edward face justice in a court where no cover-ups could shield them. Within a week, both men were arraigned. Marcus was charged with child endangerment homicide and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Edward faced even heavier charges: corruption, conspiracy, weapons trafficking, and abuse of authority. The courtroom overflowed with press families of soldiers who had long suspected something rotten, and officers who had once saluted Edward but now looked at him with contempt. Alex sat in the front row every day, Lily's photograph clasped tightly in her hands. The first time Marcus was led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit shackled at the wrists, Alex felt a cold rush of vindication. Gone was the smirk, the arrogance. His eyes darted nervously, sweat beading at his temples. He tried to meet her gaze, but she did not flinch. She held his stare until he looked away. Edward followed, older but still imposing, medals, stripped uniform, replaced with the same prison garb. He carried himself with military stiffness, but Alex saw the cracks. His eyes avoided hers completely. The prosecution laid out the case with brutal precision. Elena's files, Noah's investigation, the recording of Marcus's confession, all pieced together into a timeline of abuse and corruption spanning decades. Witnesses came forward, emboldened by Alex's courage. The fellow officer Marcus had nearly strangled during training his ex-wife with trembling hands, describing nights of violence. Even Dr. Harris confirming the bruises on Lily's body were not consistent with an accident. Each testimony was a hammer striking at the walls Edward had built. But the most devastating moment came when the financial trails were presented. Pages of offshore accounts, signatures in Edward's own hand, contracts linking weapons to extremist buyers. The courtroom went silent as the prosecutor declared, this was not just negligence. This was betrayal of the very soldiers General Monroe swore to protect. Gasps rippled through the audience. Marcus's defense tried desperately to paint him as a troubled man grieving his niece, his words in the recording taken out of context. Edward's lawyers claimed political motivations, insisted the evidence was doctored, but every claim crumbled under the weight of hard proof. Elena herself testified, explaining how she recovered files and why they could not have been fabricated. Her calm authority silenced the defense. During breaks, Alex often retreated to the hallway, hands trembling from the emotional weight. Noah stayed at her side, offering quiet steadiness. "You're doing it, Alex. Every day they lose another shield. Every day you win another truth." She nodded, though tears often blurred her vision. She had dreamed of this reckoning, but living it felt both surreal and agonizing. At one point, Marcus was allowed to speak. He rose shakily, voice breaking as he tried to plead for leniency. "I never meant for Lily to die. I lost control. I didn't know what I was doing." His words cracked, but Alex knew the performance. She had seen him fake tears before. She stood, voice ringing across the courtroom. "You pushed her. You looked at her and saw weakness. You hated that she reminded you of me, and you killed her because you thought no one would hold you accountable. But look around, Marcus. The world sees you now." The judge allowed her words, and Marcus sank back into his seat, defeated. Edward finally took the stand in his own defense posture, rigid voice still carrying command. "I served this country for 4 decades. I bled for it. And now, because my daughter seeks revenge for a tragedy she cannot accept, my name is being dragged through mud. You dishonor me, Alexandra. You dishonor our family." His words cut, but Alex stood tall, holding Lily's photograph high. "No father. You dishonored yourself the moment you chose power over your children, money over justice, reputation over truth. You dishonored our family the moment you let Marcus's violence grow unchecked. Lily paid the price, and now so will you." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Every day felt like a lifetime. But when the jury finally returned, the verdicts were clear. Marcus Monroe, guilty on all counts. Life imprisonment without parole. Edward Monroe, guilty of corruption, conspiracy, and trafficking. 40 years in federal prison. The judge's gavel echoed like thunder. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled, families cried, officers exchanged looks of relief and betrayal. Marcus slumped forward, face pale. Edward sat stone still, jaw clenched, but his hands trembled. Alex closed her eyes, tears streaming freely, but these were not tears of despair. They were of release of justice, finally breaking through decades of silence. She whispered to the photo she held. "We did it, baby. Justice is yours." Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed microphones thrust toward her. A reporter shouted, "Lieutenant Monroe, what do you feel after bringing down your father and brother?" She held up the photo of Lily, her voice carrying steady despite the tears. "I feel what every mother feels when truth finally speaks louder than power. This is not about me. This is about her. About every victim who was told to stay silent. Never again." The crowd erupted in applause, strangers reaching out, some saluting her, some weeping openly. Alex felt the weight of the moment. For the first time, she was not just a daughter of Edward Monroe or the sister of Marcus. She was her own, standing tall in the wreckage of a toxic family, carrying her child's memory like a banner. That night, she sat alone in her apartment. The city outside buzzed with news, but inside was silence. She lit a candle by Lily's photo, the flame flickering gently. She whispered into the quiet, "They are gone, my love. They cannot touch you anymore. They cannot touch me either. Their reign is over." For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to sleep, truly sleep, without fear of what tomorrow would bring. Because tomorrow belonged to her, and to the justice she had carved from the ashes of pain. 6 months after the verdict, the world around Alexandra Monroe had shifted in ways she could never have predicted during those first days of grief. The trial had ended, her father and brother locked away, their names stripped from the honor rolls they once clung to. Yet the silence of her apartment still weighed heavy. Lily's laughter no longer echoed down the hall, her toys still sat untouched in their baskets, and the drawing on the fridge remained pinned as if time itself refused to move forward. But Alexandra was learning that healing was not about forgetting. It was about building something new from the broken pieces. Her uniform hung in the closet, pressed and untouched. She had formally resigned from the Navy 2 months earlier, unable to reconcile her oath with the institution that had once been complicit in protecting her father. The resignation was not weakness, it was choice. She had given her service, and now she would serve in another way. The Lilly Foundation had been her answer, a nonprofit born from the ashes of loss dedicated to protecting children caught in violent homes and exposing the systems that protected abusers. Donations had poured in after the trial from soldiers, families, even strangers who saw in Alex's fight their own buried scars. She rented a modest office downtown, filled it with volunteers, and began turning rage into action. On a bright spring morning, Alex stood in front of a group of survivors at the Foundation's first workshop. Women with haunted eyes, children clutching stuffed toys, men who had been silenced by shame. She told them Lily's story not as a tragedy, but as a promise. We are here, so no one else has to stand alone. We are here because silence is what abusers count on, and silence is what we will break. The room erupted in quiet applause, tears streaking more than one face. Alex felt Lily's presence there like sunlight warming her shoulders. Noah had become more than an ally. His book on the Monroe trial was already climbing bestseller lists, exposing the network of corruption Edward had woven. He had insisted on donating half the royalties to the foundation. More than that, he was always there steady as a lighthouse. Late nights they worked side by side, editing reports, reviewing cases, sometimes simply sitting in silence when the weight of memory became too much. Alex had not spoken the word love aloud, not yet, but she felt it blooming quietly, patiently, as if waiting for her to be ready. Elena remained her shield. She set up firewalls for the Foundation's servers, ensured every document was encrypted, and trained volunteers on digital safety. Whenever Alex faltered, Elena reminded her, "Pain made you a weapon, but healing will make you unstoppable." The three of them had become a family forged in truth far stronger than the one Alex was born into. Still, nights were the hardest. Sometimes Alex woke to the sound of Lily's voice in dreams calling for her, and she would sit in the dark, clutching the stuffed bear until dawn. But even those moments had shifted. Where once she had felt only despair, now she felt a strange peace. Grief was no longer an open wound, but a scar she carried proudly, a reminder of the battle fought and the promise kept. The final step in her journey came unexpectedly. One afternoon, she received a letter from a prison counselor. Marcus had requested contact. At first, Alex wanted to burn it to erase his name from her world entirely. But something in her hesitated. Not forgiveness, never that, but closure. Weeks later, she stood in a sterile visiting room, glass between them. Marcus looked older already, arrogant, strained eyes hollow. He picked up the phone slowly. "Alex, I don't expect you to forgive me. I see her face every night. I can't escape it." His voice cracked. Alex's hand tightened around the receiver. "Good. You shouldn't escape it. That face is the last thing you will carry until the day you die. That is justice." She set the phone down without another word and walked away. Outside, the air felt lighter. She had faced the monster and realized he could no longer touch her. On the 6-month anniversary of the verdict, the Foundation hosted its first memorial gala. Survivors lit candles for those they had lost. Alex lit one for Lily, holding it high as she spoke to the crowd. "My daughter's life was short, but her legacy will be long. Because of her children will be protected. Because of her voices will be heard. Because of her predators will face consequences." The hall erupted in applause, candles flickering like stars. Later that night, Alex returned home. She placed the candle beside Lily's photo and sat quietly. For the first time, she felt not only grief, but hope. She pulled out a folded paper Noah had discovered tucked inside one of Lily's old toys weeks earlier. It was a note scrawled in crayon. The words were crooked but clear. "Mommy is my hero." Alex pressed the paper to her chest, tears flowing freely, but these were tears of release. She whispered to the photo voice, steady and soft. "You were right, baby. I didn't feel like a hero when I lost you. I felt broken. But today I know. I am your hero, and you are mine." As dawn broke, Alex stepped onto her balcony, the ocean stretching infinite before her. The wind carried the scent of salt, the sound of waves, and something else possibility. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The war was over. Justice had been done, and though scars remained, life was waiting. She lifted her head to the horizon and whispered one last promise. Rest easy, Lily. Mommy has the watch now. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, I want to take a moment to breathe with you because I know this one has been heavy. Alexandra's journey was not just about uncovering corruption or standing up to a powerful family. It was about what happens when love for a child is stronger than fear, when a mother decides that silence is no longer an option, and when the truth finally outweighs lies, no matter how long they've been protected. For so many of you watching, especially those of you over 50 who have lived through decades of family struggles, betrayals, and battles for respect, you know exactly what it means to carry scars that never really fade. Maybe your story didn't involve uniforms or courtrooms, but maybe it did involve being silenced, overlooked, or controlled by people who thought they were untouchable. Alexandra's fight is a reminder that even when the odds feel impossible, one voice steadied by courage and surrounded by a few loyal allies can shake the walls of the powerful. I want you to think about the promise she made to Lily. She didn't just vow to protect her daughter's memory. She vowed to make sure no other child would fall to the same cruelty. That's why she built the Lily Foundation. And that's why this story matters far beyond one family's tragedy. It matters because justice is not just a word. It's an action, and it demands persistence even when the world calls you unstable, even when the system is stacked against you. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of your own past, or if it made you think of someone you love who deserved better, share it. Share it with someone who needs to know that their pain does not have to be the end of the story. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that truth once spoken cannot be buried again. And I want to hear from you. What did this story bring up in your heart? Did it remind you of a moment when you stood up for yourself, or maybe a moment when you wish you had? Your reflections are what give these stories power. Drop your thoughts in the comments because every voice adds to the chorus of resilience. Before you go, remember to subscribe. Each story here is crafted not just to entertain, but to remind you that strength is born in the darkest hours and that justice, whether in a courtroom, in a family, or within your own spirit, deserves to be spoken aloud. Click subscribe, join this community, and let's keep shining light on the shadows together. Thank you for spending your precious time with me. Hold on to hope. Hold on to courage. And never forget, heroes are often the ones who choose to stand when silence would have been easier.